As nearly as possible now, try to look at it as if you had never seen an onion before. Try, in other words, to meet it on its own terms, not to dictate yours to it. You are convinced, of course, that you know what an onion is. You think perhaps that it is a brownish yellow vegetable, basically spherical in shape, composed of fundamentally similar layers. All such prejudices should be abandoned. The onion is what the onion is. And your work here and now is to find that out.
Welcome to the Earth Keepers podcast. This podcast is for people who seek new and better ways to love and care for the earth. It's a podcast for anyone who is deeply concerned about the harm being done to the environment on a local and global level. It's a podcast that builds community and connection between people of like heart and mind, people who believe that earth care should be integrated into every aspect of life, and for many in the Earth Keepers community, that includes our spiritual lives. I'm Forrest, and in this special episode, we depart from the usual interview format and offer you some moments of guided meditation instead. While I am in Ireland interviewing people for future episodes of the podcast, Wes Willison is stepping in to walk our listeners through something called the Onion Session. Drawn from the book The Supper of the Lamb by Robert Farrar Capon, this is a guided meditation that's meant to focus our attention on one small and humble object. This soul and mind-opening exercise helps us to perceive the wonder contained in an onion and to appreciate it as one part of creation loved by God. Just a note, you might wait to listen to this episode when you've got some downtime. For this meditation exercise, you'll need an onion, a small knife, a cutting board, and about half an hour of uninterrupted time in a quiet space. Welcome, friends, to the Earth Keepers podcast.
So this is an exercise from a book by Robert Farrar Capon called The Supper of the Lamb. I first encountered this exercise while I was in grad school. I read it in the book, and then later I was able to try it out with some friends. We did it in person, and it was really powerful. So we ended up using it in a retreat that we ran a few years later at this place called the Farminary. And I've edited it a bit. I've revisited it over the years, and I hope it can be of use and of value to you. Before we start, a few housekeeping items. I recommend that you set your phone to do not disturb, turn off the notifications, silence it, do what you need to so you won't be disturbed. This exercise will take about half an hour. I leave this choice up to you, but the whole goal of this exercise is to pay attention. If you only give half your attention to this, you kind of miss the point, and it's a waste of your time twice over, because you may want to go back and try it again, but you'll also not be able to pay attention to that other thing you were working on. So just get it over now and just set everything else aside and focus on this. For this exercise, please grab a cutting board, a chef's knife, like a larger knife, and if you have one, a paring knife, like a smaller, sharp knife. And lastly, of course, our guest of honor, you will need an onion. A regular old yellow onion will be just fine. As we go through this, if I'm going too fast for you, feel free to just hit pause and then come back. And so, to begin, sit down at a table with the cutting board, the knife, and the onion in front of you. Address yourself to the onion at hand. You must resist the temptation to feel silly at this point. I ask that you don't give up out of embarrassment, but address yourself to the onion. Introduce yourself. You will note, to begin with, that the onion is a thing, a being, just as you are. Savor that for a moment. The two of you sit here in mutual confrontation. Together with knife, board, table, and chair, you are the constituents of a place in the highest sense of the word. This is a session, a meeting, a society of things. You have, you see, already discovered something. The uniqueness, the placiness of places derives not from abstractions like location, but from confrontations like person, onion. Erring theologians have strayed to their graves without learning what you have just come upon. They have insisted, for example, that heaven is no place at all, because it could not be defined in terms of spatial coordinates, or they have written off humanity's eternal habitation as a, quote, state of mind. But look what your onion has done for you. It has given you back the possibility of heaven as a place, without encumbering you with the irrelevancy of location. This meeting between the two of you could be moved to 1,000 different latitudes and longitudes, and still remain the session it started out to be. Indeed, by the motions of the Earth, the solar system, the galaxy, and the universe, if that can be defined, then every place, every meeting of matter becomes a kind of cosmic floating crap game. Location is accidental to its deepest meaning. What really matters is not where we are, but who, what real beings are with us. And in that sense, heaven, where we see God face to face through the risen flesh of Jesus, may well be the placiest of all places, as it is the most gloriously material of all meetings. Here, perhaps, we do indeed see only through a glass darkly. We mistake one of the earthly husks of place for the heart of its mattering. But back to the onion itself. As nearly as possible now, try to look at it as if you had never seen an onion before. Try, in other words, to meet it on its own terms, not to dictate yours to it. You are convinced, of course, that you know what an onion is. You think perhaps that it is a brownish yellow vegetable, basically spherical in shape, composed of fundamentally similar layers. All such prejudices should be abandoned. The onion is what the onion is. And your work here and now is to find that out. For a start, therefore, notice that your onion has two ends. A lower, now marked only by the grayish, blackish spot from which the root filaments descended into the earth, and an upper, which terminates in a withered peak of onion paper. Unless your onions are over the hill, or have begun to sprout because you store them under a leaky sink trap. Anyways, note once again what you have discovered. An onion is not a sphere in repose. An onion is a linear thing, a bloom of vectors thrusting upward from base to tip. Stand your onion, therefore, root end down upon the board, and see it as the paradigm of life that it is, as one member of the vast, living, gravity-defying troop that, across the face of the earth, moves, light and airward, as long as the world lasts. Only now have you the perspective needed to enter the onion itself. Begin with the outermost layer of paper, or onion skin. Start to peel that layer off. And be careful. In the ordinary processes of cooking, the outer skin of an onion is removed by peeling away the immediately underlying layers of flesh with it. It's a legitimate shortcut. The working cook cannot afford the time it takes to loosen only the paper. But here, however, it is not time that matters, but the onion. So, work gently then, lifting the skin with the point of your knife so as not to cut or puncture the flesh beneath. And this is harder than you may have thought. Old onion skins give up easily, but new ones, they can be stubborn. Look now at the fall of stripped and flaked skin before you. It is dry. It is, all things considered, one of the driest things in the world. Not dusty dry like potatoes, but smoothly and thinly dry, suggesting not accidental desiccation, not the withering due to age or external circumstance, but a fresh and essential dryness. Dryness as an achievement, not a failure. Elegant dryness, deliberate dryness. More than that, onion paper is, like the onion itself, directional, vectored, ribbed. It will, oddly, split as easily across its striations as with them. Its grain has been reduced by dryness to a merely visual quality. Best of all, though, it is of two colors. The outside, a brownish yellow of no particular brightness, but the inside, a soft, burnished, coppery gold, ribbed, especially near the upper end, with an exquisiteness only hinted at on the outside. Accordingly, when you have removed all the paper from the onion, turn the fragments inside up on the board. They are elegant company. For with their understated display of wealth, they bring you to one of the oldest and most secret things of the world, the sight of what no one but you has ever seen. This quiet gold, and the subtly flattened sheen of greenish-yellow white onion that now stands exposed, is an uncharted vista. Like the incredible fit of two almonds in a shell, they present themselves to you as the animals to Adam, as nameless till seen by a human, to be met, known, and christened into the city of being. They come as deputies of all the hiddennesses of the world, of all the silent competencies endlessly at work, deep down in things. And they come to you as their priest and voice, for oblation by your heart's astonishment at their great glory. Only now are you ready for the first cut. So, holding the onion vertically, slice it cleanly in half, right down the center line, and look at what you have done. You have opened the floodgates of being. First, as to the innards, the mental diagram of sphere within sphere is abolished immediately. Structurally, the onion is not a ball, but a nested set of fingers within fingers, each thrust up from the base through the center of the one before it. The outer digits are indeed swollen to roundness by the pressure of the inner, but their sphericity is incidental to the linear motion of flame enthrusting flame. Next, the colors. The cross-section of each several flame follows a rule. On its inner edge, it is white. On its outer, pigmented. The color varying from the palest greenish yellow in the middle flames to more recognizably onion shades as you proceed outward. The centermost flames of all are frankly and startlingly green. It is they which will finally thrust upward into light. And thus the spectrum of the onion. Green, through white, to green again, and ending all in the brown skin that you have already peeled away. Life inside death. The forces of being storming the walls of the void. Freshness in the face of the burning, oxidizing world which matterizes all life at last to the color of cut apples and old sherry. Next, gentle pressure. Press a finger against the surface of the onion and look at that cut surface. Moisture. The incredible, utter wetness of onions, of course, you cannot know yet. This is only the first hinted pressing of juice. But the sea within all life has already tipped its hand. You have cut open no inanimate thing, but a living, tumescent being. A whole that is, as all life is, smaller, simpler than its parts, which holds, as all life does, the pieces of its being in compression. And to prove that, try to fit the two halves of the onion back together. Press the two faces along their cut surfaces against each other. you will notice that they do not fit back together. It cannot be done. The faces which began as two plain surfaces drawn by a straight blade are now mutually convex and rock against each other. Put them together on one side, and the opposite shows a gap of more than 2 minutes on a clock face. And again, now pressure, but pressure towards you. So cup each half of the onion in your hands and squeeze it like a lemon as it faces you. And now the smell of onion, released by the flowing of its juices. Hardly a discovery, of course. Even the boor knows his onions to that degree. But pause still. Reflect how little smell there is to a whole onion, how well the noble reek was contained till now by the encompassing dryness. And reflect, too, how it is the humors and sauces of being that give the world flavor. How all life came from the sea. And how, without water, nothing can hold a soul. Reflect finally, what a soul the onion must have, if it boasts such juices. Your eyes will not yet have begun to water, nor the membranes of your nose to recoil. The onion has only, if you will, whispered to you. Yet you have not mistaken a syllable of its voice, not strained after a single word. How will you stop your senses when it raises this stage whisper to a shout? Now, however, the two halves of the onion lie, cut face up, before you. With the point of your paring knife, carefully remove the base, or bottom, or heart, much as you would do to free the leaves of an artichoke or of a head of lettuce. Take away only as much as will make possible to lift out, one by one, the several layers. Then, gently pry them out in order, working from the center to the outside, layer by layer. Arrange them in a line as you do, with matching parts from the separate halves laid next to each other, making them ascend thus by twos from the smallest green fingers on the left, through white flames in the middle, up to the outer shelves on the right, which sit like paired Russian church spires. And now, look. The myth of sphericity is finally dead. The onion, as now displayed, is plainly all vectors, risers, and thrusts. Tongues of fire. But the Pentecost that they mark is that of nature, not grace. The Spirit's first brooding on the face of the waters. Lift one of the flames. Feel its lightness and rigidity, its crispness and strength. And now, let's make proof of its membranes. First, remove the inner membrane. Thin, translucent, easily removed. The outer, however, thinner, almost transparent, and so tightly bonded to the flesh that it protests audibly against separation. You will probably have to break the flesh to free even a piece of the outer membrane. These membranes, when in place, give the onion its fire, its sheen, soft within and brighter without. But when they are removed, the flesh is revealed in a new light. And given a minute to dry, it acquires a pale, crystalline flatness, like nothing on earth. Eggshell is the only word for it, but by comparison to the stripped flesh of an onion, an eggshell is really only as delicate as poured concrete. Set aside your broken flame now and pick up a fresh one. Clear a little space on the board. Lay it down on its cut face and slice lengthwise into several strips. But first, before you do that, you'll want to tap it lightly with the edge of the knife first. There's a hollow, crisp sound to be gotten that way, something between a talk and a tank. That is the sound of health and youth, the audible response of cellularity when it is properly addressed. Neither solid nor soft, it is the voice of life itself. So after producing the sound, lay the flame down and slice it lengthwise into strips. Next, take one of those slivers and press it. Here you will need firmness. If you have strong nails, use the back of the one on your middle finger. If not, steamroller the slice with a round pencil. Press and roll it until it yields all the water it will. And now you have reached the deepest revelation of all. First, and obviously, the onion is now part of you, and it will be for days. For the next 2 mornings at least, when you wash your hands and your face, your meeting with the onion will be reconvened in more than memory. The onion has spoken a word with power, and even the echo is not in vain. But second, the onion itself is all but gone. The flesh, once so crisp and solid, turns out to have been an aqueous house of cards. If you have done your pressing well, the little scraps of membrane and cell wall are nearly non-existent. The whole unfolded nest of flames was a blaze of water, a burning bush grown from the soil of the primeval oceans. All life is from the sea. And God said, "Let the waters bring forth abundantly." And God saw that it was good. This juice, this liquor, this rough and ready cordial runs freely now on board and hands and knife. Salt, sweet, and yet so much itself as to speak for no other, it enters the city of being. What you have seen, to be sure, is only the smallest part of its singularity, the merest hint of the stunning act of being that it is. But it is enough, perhaps, to enable you to proceed. If not with safety, then with caution. For somehow, beneath this gorgeous paradigm of unnecessary being, lies the act by which it exists. You have just now reduced this onion to its parts, shivered it into echoes, and pressed it to a memory, but you've also caught the hint that a thing is more than the sum of all the insubstantialities that compose it. Hopefully, you will never again argue that the solidities of the world are mere matters of accident, creatures of air and darkness, temporary and meaningless shapes out of nothing. Perhaps now you have seen, at least dimly, that the uniqueness of creation is the result of continuous, creative support, of effective regard by no mean lover. God likes onions. Therefore, they are. The fit, the colors, the smell, the tensions, the tastes, the textures, the lines, the shapes, these are all a response. Not to some forgotten decree that there may as well be onions as turnips, but to God's present delight, God's intimate and immediate joy in all that you have seen, and in the 1,000 other wonders that you do not even suspect. With Peter, the onion says, "Lord, it is good for us to be here." "Yes," says God, "Tov, very good." I shall give you the summation of my case for paying attention. Our real work is to look at the things of the world and to love them for what they are. That is, after all, what God does. And humans were not made in God's image for nothing. The fruit of God's attention can be seen in all the arts, crafts, and sciences. It can cost time and effort, but it pays handsomely. If an hour can be spent on one onion, think how much regarding it took on the part of that old Russian who looked at onions and church spires long enough to come up with St. Basil's Cathedral. Or how much curious and loving attention was expended by the first person who looked hard enough at the insides of trees, the entrails of cats, the hind ends of horses, and the juice of pine trees to realize that they could turn them all into the first fiddle. No doubt, someone urged them to get up and do something useful with their time. I am sure that they were a stalwart enough lover of things to pay no attention at all to the nagging. But how wonderful it would have been if they had known what we know now about their dawdling. They could have silenced that nag with the greatest riposte of all time. Don't bother me. I am creating the possibility of the Bach unaccompanied sonatas. But if humanity's real attention is repaid so handsomely, our inattention costs us dearly. Every time we diagram something instead of looking at it, every time we regard not what a thing is, but what it can be made to mean to us, every time we substitute a conceit for a fact, we get grease all over the kitchen of the world. Reality slips away from us, and we are left with nothing but the oldest monstrosity in the world: an idol. Things must be met for themselves. To take them only for their meaning is to convert them into gods, to make them too important, and therefore to make them unimportant altogether. For idolatry has two faults. It is not only a slur on the true God, it is also an insult to true things. They made a calf in Horeb, thus they turned their glory into the similitude of a calf that eateth hay. Bad enough, you say. Ah, but it was worse than that. Whatever good may have resided in the golden calf, whatever loveliness of gold or beauty of line, went begging the minute the Israelites got the idea that it was their savior out of the bondage of Egypt. In making the statue a matter of the greatest point, they missed the point of its matter altogether. Berate me not, therefore, for carrying on about slicing onions in a world under the sentence of a pandemic and a climate catastrophe. The heaviest weight on the shoulders of the earth is still the age-old idolatry by which humans have cheated themselves of both creator and creation. And this age is no exception. If you prefer to use your time to address yourself to graver matters, well and good. Idolatry needs all the enemies it can get. But if I choose to break images in the kitchen and the garden, I cannot be faulted. We are both good people, in a day when good people are hard to find. So let us join hands and get on with our iconoclasm. There's a Russian story about an old woman whose vices were so numerous that no one could name even one of her virtues. She was slothful, spiteful, envious, deceitful, greedy, foul-mouthed, and proud. She lived by herself and in herself. She loved no one and no thing. One day, a beggar came to her door. She upbraided him, abused him, and sent him away. As he left, however, she unaccountably threw an onion after him. He picked it up and ran away. In time, the woman died and was dragged down to her due reward in hell. But just as she was about to slip over the edge of the bottomless pit, she looked up. Above her, descending from the infinite distances of heaven, was a great archangel, and in his hand was an onion. "Grasp this," he said. "If you hold it, it will lift you up to heaven." One real thing is closer to God than all the diagrams in the world.
You've been listening to Wes Willison, my nephew and a friend to the Earthkeepers podcast. To learn more about Wes or about the source of the Onion session, please go to the show notes for this episode. I am Forrest Inslee, your podcast host. Our executive producer is James Amadon, and our producer is Dave Wolfers. Timothy Connor is our editor, and Forrest Reed is the creator of our original music. Our research assistant is Colleen Meggerly, and Jesselyn Gentry is our social media director. Thank you, friends, for listening, and please join us for our next conversation on the Earthkeepers podcast.